Break was good. I've had some travel issues for a couple of our players, so still trying to get that squared away, as I know the airports have been crazy, but it was a good break. Glad to have the team back. Looking forward to SEC play. We understand what's in front of us, and it's definitely once again going to be a gauntlet, but great opportunities in front of us. And as we reflect back on our non-conference, I think that's a good body of work to kind of evaluate where we're at. Have seen some really good things in areas that we've got to continue to hone in on. And, I keep talking about rebounding and just ball security. And I think in this league, especially, those two things are going to be so important. And, just talked to our girls the last day or two just about really honing in on their role and really dominating what we need them to do individually for the good of the team. And so hopefully we can have a healthy conference season. We can get everybody back on campus, and great opportunity in front of us against a very good Kentucky team.
Robin, you mentioned just some of the traveling issues that you guys are having. Just what are some of the biggest challenges that you guys are facing coming off of this extended break?
Well, you always worry a little bit about the weather, and it sounds like it's affected a lot of different teams, and just that balance of trying to give your players time to kind of recalibrate. It is a really, really long season, and you got when you have international players, the importance of just allowing that space for them to get home, but then you worry on the back end on what that might look like. So we were without 3 last night in practice. We got 2 that got in late last night, and then still waiting on 1. I don't know what that's going to look like. A lot of canceled flights, rerouted flights, and all that good stuff. So hopefully we'll be complete here in the next day or 2.
Robin, with the non-conference schedule in the past and you're looking ahead to SEC play, what are kind of your key takeaways from your team from that non-conference part of the schedule?
Yeah. Well, one, I continue to talk about that culture in the locker room and just that chemistry. And I think it's huge. I think of, the years that we made those runs in the NCAA tournament, and, just the connectivity that we had was so important. And so I like where we're at from that standpoint. I feel like 11-2 after our non-conference schedule is pretty solid. I think we learned some lessons throughout the wins and losses. And, this is a group that really wants it, that's worked really, really hard. And so we always say it's bigger than that scoreboard. And whether it's a win or a loss, what's our takeaways and how do we get better? We've got to do a better job collectively from that free throw line. I think that's going to be really, really important for us to move forward. We've got some really good shooters on our team, but we've got a couple players that I think have got to elevate what they're getting done at that free throw line. I think overall shooting percentages, pretty pleased with. Defensively, I think we've made some strides in that area. I feel like against Illinois, we kind of took a step back. I felt like there's a couple runs with Illinois where they scored on back-to-back possessions. And we've got to be better in those moments. If we're having turnovers or they're getting stops, we've got to take more pride on our defense and make sure that, we're making it challenging for them to score as well. So was disappointed in the effort defensively against Illinois. But I do think that we'll be better because of it. And like I said, this is a group that wants to learn, wants to get better, isn't afraid of watching film. And that's something that we have got to really be able to rely on. There's going to be nights in the SEC that it's really hard to score the ball. It's an athletic league. It's a defensive league. But we've got to be able to rely on our ability to get stops. And I think for the most part in the non-con, we've done a good job of that. Again, I didn't think we were at our best against Illinois. And I think we hit an Illinois team that is much improved and played really, really well. And so hats off to them and opportunity for us to learn and get better from it.
Coach, well, you've obviously been primarily paying attention to your own team. How do you kind of assess the SEC as a whole thus far this season, maybe compared to years past?
It's hard to really evaluate, to be honest with you. Like you said, you're just so focused on your own team, but knowing what teams have coming back and knowing some of the recruits from the transfer portal and high school kids that have joined our league and some of the coaches we have in our league, I always say I don't think it can get any tougher than what it is, but I think from top to bottom, it's as good as it's ever been. And I think, you've had some teams that have lost some games, but when you look at their roster and who they had available for those games, and there were some injuries, and, you can't just look at the scoreboard and say, oh, they lost to so-and-so. Well, they might not have had their best player for that game. And that does impact teams. And so I think it's as tough as it's ever been, but I think outside of maybe the top 3 or 4, it's wide open in regards to who could finish 4th or 5th compared to, the bottom of the league. I think it's going to be a game of inches.
Similarly, just how does having the experience that you have on your roster going to benefit you guys and give you a little bit of a competitive advantage when SEC play starts?
Yeah, so we do have some players obviously that have some great experience, and I think that's huge, just knowing what you're going to go into night in and night out, and knowing how teams play in the SEC, and understanding the physicality of it, being able to be resilient because it's going to be a game of runs. The importance of being assignment correct on that scouting report is huge. And I think, anytime you've got a handful of players that have been in the fires, it's huge to be able to rely on that game experience. Now we've got some with our 2 freshmen, and obviously KG's been out for a little bit, that it's going to be a little bit more challenging but at the same time, I think they've got good minutes under their belt this year. I do think, a big challenge for us so far is, even though we've got players like a Sarah Rose that's been with us for 3 years and she's an upperclassman, her role has changed greatly compared to how it has been her first 2 years. And so just being able to handle those pressures and expectations and the balance of that, I think is really important. But we've got girls that have been through the fire. They understand what we're up against, and I think they're really looking forward to the opportunities that are in front of them.
Hey, Coach. So I was watching the broadcast for your game against Illinois, and one of the things that both Brenda Van Langen and Holly Warlick were mentioning were that you said this is one of your best teams that you've had to be able to play to your system. Why is that? Is it because of the experience? Like, what are some of the other factors?
I think in my conversations with them before the game, it was more one of the most connected teams. From top to bottom, it really feels like a sisterhood in there. They're invested in each other. I don't think anyone cares about starting, minutes played, rotations. I think they're really, all in it for the front of the jersey from top to bottom. And that's pretty unique. That's a tough thing to be able to get in that locker room. But I also think it's a huge asset to have. And so I think, in our conversations before the game, it was more aligning with that connectivity in that locker room than anything.
Robin, just the fact that you guys are starting your SEC play at home, how are you going to use that to your advantage? And does it have an advantage per se?
I think it's really, I do think there's an advantage, and this is why, especially with the travel issues that we've had, to not have to get back on a flight and, add more to your travels is nice to be able to start back at home for sure. And so I do think there's an advantage from that standpoint. We're looking forward to it. I know, our men's team's got Kentucky coming up, and that environment's going to be really electric. And that's going to be exciting. You know, there's a buzz in this community. I hope that we can, generate a good turnout for our game as well. I know it's back to back and it's an 8 p.m. game, which is kind of late for a weeknight. And so, I wish it was a 6 o'clock game. But also, just understand the dynamics of what that looks like. So hopefully we're going to be able to get out some energy out of our community, and they're going to be able to make a late night game for us, because it makes a huge difference. The energy in that arena, we've seen what a huge role it can play, and we value it. We appreciate it. We need them coming out for our game as well.
Coach, if you can point at one, what's the biggest thing you would say you would hope to see from your team Thursday night, following an Illinois loss, and then also with opening up conference play?
Yeah, so I've got to go with two. I'm sorry.
Works for me.
Number one is ball security. We have got to be able to play with 12 or less turnovers. Have to. So that we talk a lot about it. We watch film. There's got to be a heightened sense of awareness and urgency to value that ball. And so that would be number one. And number two would be the connectivity on defense. I just felt like against Illinois, again, we kind of took a step back in regards to our rotations defensively that had been pretty darn good for us for the most part of this non-con schedule. And we've got to really, I think, hone in on just our scouting report on tendencies, understand that like the back of our hand. And then we've got to be able to play that really good rotation defense. And I didn't think that was there against Illinois.